Hi, I'm Kaylin Kelleher, and I am a junior here at Bloomsburg University with a double major in political science and social work. I chose to do America's role in the refugee crisis because it is such an important topic that revolves around helping people whose lives are potentially in danger. Okay, so here are some of the basics. A refugee is an individual who has been forced to relocate and leave their home country in order to seek safety. A refugee may leave their home due to something uncontrollable, such as a natural disaster, or because of a war happening in their country that puts their safety at risk. They also could be of a specific ethnicity or religion that is being oppressed against in their home country. There are 10 traditional countries of resettlement for refugees. There are Australia, Canada, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United States. The United States is the largest and accepts more refugees for resettlement than all other countries combined. Although the gap has gotten much smaller since 9/11, this still holds true. And where refugees come from, most of them come from Syria due to the Syrian refugee crisis and the Syrian civil war, but they also come from Afghanistan, South Sudan, Myanmar, and Somalia. Okay, here's a little bit about America's role. There have been approximately 3 million refugees that have resettled into the United States. In the 1980s, Congress passed the Refugee Act of 1980. This created the Federal Refugee Resettlement Program, which I will talk about on a future slide. The refugee process can take up to 18 to 24 months to be completed, which means that sometimes refugees are left in their country where their lives could possibly be in danger. The refugees admitted into the United States fluctuates every year depending on who is in charge and the political climate. There was a big fluctuation that happened post 9/11. As you can see here, these are the countries that have the most refugees that resettle in their country, and the United States surpasses all of the other ones by a lot. The Refugee Resettlement Program is created a process that refugees go through before being admitted into the United States. The first step is referral. The refugee must apply to be a candidate to enter the United States as a refugee. After the referral process is the interview and clearances. There's a lot of background checks that must happen to ensure the safety of the United States citizens. Once the clearances go through, they decide where the refugees will be placed. Many of the refugees go to larger states, such as Texas, but each state usually takes at least some refugees. After they decide where the refugee will be placed, they help the refugee with basic needs such as housing, medical assistance, money, job readiness programs, English as a foreign language classes, and more. All of these are aimed at having smooth transition for the refugees and to improve their quality of life. As you can see here, there's a chart that shows the process that the refugees have to go through, and the first is security, and they have screening and interviews and clearances and fingerprinting, which happens by the Department of Homeland Security. And then the second part is placement, which happens by the State Department, the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, and it takes 30 to 90 days to figure out where they're going to place the refugees and getting them actually there. The third step is the transition step, and it happens with the Department of Health and Human Services, and this is where they give them the cash and medical assistance and employment services so that they can be productive members of society and have a smooth transition here. Okay, pre-9/11. In the 1990s, the U.S. admitted somewhere between 69,300 and 122,000 refugees per year. The highest ever recorded year for admitted refugees was in 1980 when the United States admitted 207,116 refugees and had a cap of 231,700. This is post 9/11, and in 2002, after 9/11 actually happened, the refugee number dropped to 27,000, even though George W. Bush stated he would accept 70,000 refugees in 2002. But there was a lot of turmoil, and everybody was worried about terrorist attacks happening, and nobody knew what exactly was happening, so everybody would rather be safe. There were also more precautions that were put into place to prevent terrorist attacks, which also affected refugees who were just attempting to get to a safer country for their own good and for their family's own good. And the Syrian refugee crisis, which is what everybody thinks of when they think of refugees usually, It was caused by the Syrian civil war, and in 2014, the United States took about 12,000 Syrian refugees in, and President Obama said he wanted to admit 10,000 Syrian refugees in 2015 and 2016. The Paris attacks affected this, and people wanted more screening for refugees to be allowed into the country for the safety of the United States citizens, and the United States uses a priority system to bring refugees here, which I talk about on the next slide. But as you can see, in 2015, only 1,682 Syrian refugees were admitted, whereas in 2016, there was 12,587 refugees that were admitted into the United States. Okay, the priority system. The priority 1 is the individual selection, and this is for individuals who are from any country that has been officially recognized by the U.S. government as a refugee, and for whom resettlement is seen to be the best option. This could be someone who spoke up against their government, is now in danger of being killed. They just have to get out of there. Priority 2 is the group selection. This is for specific groups who have been identified by the Department of State as being in need of resettlement. Often, there are individuals of a specific ethnic, religious, or national identity which have been persecuted or oppressed in their home country. And priority 3 is family reunification. This priority is given to refugees who are spouses, unmarried children under the age of 21, or parents of individuals who have already been admitted to the U.S. as a refugee. Priority 3 immigrants come from certain countries that are designated by the Department of State. When an individual wants to bring a relative into the United States with a Priority 3 designation, they must file an affidavit of relationship with a local agency. And here are my references.